what I thought we would do initially is I'll just maybe take 5 minutes apiece to just introduce ourselves and the work that we do independently of each
Hmm.
other. And then the rest of this would be devoted to talking about intersectionality and how it's
Hmm.
important when we're facing fascism not just in America, but around the world. And
Sure.
my affiliations politically are I'm an anarcho-communist. So what that
Hmm.
means essentially, like academically, it just means that we believe in decentralization, similar to
Hmm.
the Black Panther movement, for example, where we don't
Hmm.
believe in a top-down authority to administer power through the state. And
Hmm.
even if we incorporate like Marxist theory and stuff like that. And yeah, keeping that in mind, the work that I do is predominantly focused on sex work, the rights of sex workers, alongside other work as well. It's my main focus, but I also focus on the rights of Palestinians and other people experiencing genocide overseas, but
Hmm.
also the rights of BIPOC people domestically and the trans genocide that's currently happening and the passing of all the different laws that they're either trying to put through or already have. And
Hmm.
that's basically my focus initially. I started off through Gothic studies. Gothic is sort of the British equivalent of what they would call like horror studies in America
Hmm.
if you were to like go into film studies, but your focus was like Jordan Peele or someone like that. Where
Mm.
Peele's an interesting case though, because he actually started off in comedy, but comedy and
Yeah,
horror kind of walk hand
very
in
related.
hand.
Hmm.
So basically, I'm kind of a weird grab bag of different things where I combine Marxist theory, anarcho-communism, and the Gothic with BDSM, kink, sex work more broadly, but I try and turn it
Hmm.
into like a form of activism. Uh, and that's essentially what I do. But lately, now that my book series is predominantly written, I'm focusing on intersectionality. So
Yeah.
which mostly boils down to me being like, oh, uh, this camp person seems really cool. I'll reach out to them and see if maybe they want to maybe just have a talk. Specifically,
Yeah.
I saw your video on MDLs and modern day lynchings, and
Hmm.
uh, it really spoke to me just because it's a very serious topic. It's an ongoing thing, and I specifically remember you saying, "Wake the fuck up! This ain't normal." And
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, fuck,
Right.
yeah, fucking oath." So that's kind of where I'm coming at. So if you want to maybe take, just tell us a little bit about yourself and where
Of
you're coming
course.
from.
Yeah, definitely can do. And also, you're being a little modest over there, Persephone. I took a look at some of your work, and I took a look at the promo page for sex positivity versus sex coercion.
Hmm.
I liked what I saw. I thought it was really an inspired way, to approach this kind of activism,
Hmm.
and just a really interesting take on how to take something that you participate in and that your community participates in and tackle that from a unique angle. I'm not by any means a prude, so none of the promo bothered me.
Okay, no, yeah, that's good. I was like, I hope they're not bothered by, because I sent you the safe for work link, but I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, if you click on any of this stuff, it's gonna
Oh
get
no, I went straight to not safe for work. I have I
okay.
have no I have no qualms in any way with sex work. And
Okay.
also, what are your pronouns? Make sure I get it right. Mine are he him.
Okay. He, her, him. In my case, it's she, they. So you can use either. I'm not.
She, they.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Cool. Well, yeah, it's nice to meet you, Persephone.
Likewise.
Yeah, so I reviewed a little bit of what you do, and yeah, I like it. I think you're doing the same thing in some ways that I'm doing, is taking my life experience and filtering it into compelling stories and art that exist to push a message and to get people to understand something about maybe a topic that they're not as educated about. And so my background is originally as a musician, at least creatively. I was a hip hop artist for 10 years or so. And I was doing that professionally for a while working at ad agencies on the corporate America side,
Hmm.
and always trying to seek a way out of corporate America. I never stopped making art. So I went from making music and doing the festival thing, playing with bands, and you know, licensing out songs to TV shows and stuff like that, directly to making music videos for myself and others. So that got me into film and
Hmm.
cameras and the way you see it now. And so I started doing client work on that side, and I got good with the camera, just like I got good with music.
Hmm.
I was doing both of those for a while, and I created this series that nobody watched called Storyline. It was like my first foray into YouTube, and I was behind the camera, and I was lifting up my collaborators and just people I knew, and like giving them a mini documentary about themselves for free. So I made like 7 episodes of that. I thought it was some of my best work. Nobody else agreed with that. But I mean, just because nobody watched it.
Uh-huh.
And essentially, my first ever video essay was the first episode of my deep dive series, the kind of flagship series on YouTube that launched me into this career.
Hmm.
And the first ever episode went viral. It was about Black owned multi level marketing companies, essentially pyramid schemes.
Hmm.
And I ripped them apart. And it's still my most famous video of all time, which is unusual for a YouTuber. It's usually a climb up. Mine is, I guess, if technically a climb down, but I've managed to keep that momentum going and make more popular things since that video
Hmm.
and turn it into a career. And now I have like 4 channels. So I do a lot of financial exploitation coverage, and all of it takes the shape of short films, essentially, with various levels of flair and documentarian kind of
Hmm.
themes and style in there. My most recent work is a full documentary about a person named Dr. Sabi within the Black community, who was a holistic, quote unquote, doctor who called himself a doctor and wasn't. But that
Okay.
was legitimately a documentary. Like, I traveled to do that. I flew to
Oh,
LA to
okay.
film
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
it.
Absolutely.
Like, that was a real documentary. So I'm a documentary maker, but I'm also a video essayist.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's. I noticed that too. That you had multiple channels. I saw. I saw. I think two of them that I'm familiar with, because there's Crash Outs, I think, is
Yep.
the one that
Yep.
that I came across. But the way that YouTube works now is when you can do like channel collabs. So when I saw
Yep.
Crash Outs, I think it was tied to one of your other
Yeah.
channels. And
Cam James, and that's the main channel. Yeah.
yep, yep. And I just, yeah, I was hooked from the start. I really appreciated your candor, and the fact that, a lot of people think that, creators of a more radical persuasion, left
Hmm.
of center, and anything left of center is, we just kind of like started out that way. And
Hmm.
I remember hearing I think you were having an interview or a discussion with FD Signifier, and you
Yeah.
were explaining to him how you had started off in a a situation where you were basically being invited by liberals to
Yes.
make
Yes.
like political content, like
Hmm.
essays, or not essays, but hey, can you like record us and like do our ads and stuff like that, maybe?
Yep. Yep. So I can elaborate. I was early on in my YouTube trajectory, I was invited by these political entities to make videos, like bespoke videos about political topics.
Mm,
They'd pay me for them, and our views happen to be aligned because these are mostly democratic organizations. And I was at the time much more of a centrist
Hmm.
in my, not, I guess I've never been a centrist. I've been always been more of a liberal in my views, but now I'm pretty far to the left of liberals. Um, but there was like a defining moment in that trajectory where I got invited to do this PBS a promo push for this PBS special hosted and created by Dr. Henry Louis Gates,
Hmm.
and it was essentially dealing with the Black and Jewish communities and the rift that has risen between them, but also how they've worked together historically.
Hmm.
And ultimately, the goal of this piece was to bring us closer together. But I suspected from the get go that they were trying to whitewash the genocide in Palestine.
Yeah.
And I was kind of right. Like, I had to fight to ask my question about Palestine in that interview. And even then, overall, the piece ended up becoming watered down and felt like a propaganda push. And that was kind of my last straw radicalization moment that was like, okay, this is a fork in the road. I have
Yeah.
to choose whether I'm going to actually be a radical and prioritize Black liberation in my art and my efforts here, and also the liberation of the underrepresented groups I stand up for, like the queer community,
Hmm.
or I can go down this liberal path where I just follow the money. And so for
Yeah.
me, it was a very clear decision to make. That's like, okay, I'm a radical now, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask what your radicalizing moment was, and so
Yeah.
that's a pretty common one these days, I think, is what's happening in Palestine for sure. Uh,
Yeah.
in my case, with Palestine specifically, I had kind of an unusual upbringing, even though I grew up in Southeast Michigan, which is a purple state, but it has some pretty clear-cut divisions depending on where you are, because
Mm-hmm.
it's where the KKK are located, for example, but there's also
Mm-hmm.
a strong um, multicultural uh, side of things, depending on Ann Arbor, for instance, is kind of a melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the University of Michigan, the University Eastern Michigan University, Washtenaw Community College. They're all very diverse schools, um,
Yeah.
and so depending on where you are, it's very checkered. Um, when I was growing up as a little girl, and my dad's father was still alive. He came from Holland. His name was Henry van der Waard II, and
Mm-hmm.
he was a member of the Dutch resistance. And he was 10 when the Nazis invaded his country,
Mm-hmm.
which the politics, it's kind of a history rhyming, repeating itself somewhat, where his country basically appeased Hitler and said, "Yeah, come on in. It's totally okay." And then Hitler's like, "Don't mind if I
Yeah.
do." And what ended up happening is that essentially the occupation lasted from 1940 until 1945. And my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather was 10, and then he was 15 when the his country was liberated. And I
Mm-hmm.
basically spent my childhood hearing stories of the war and his side of things, where he would break into ammo dumps and take the radios out of torpedoes and use them, the guiding crystals, to make little makeshift radios, which was a big no-no
Mm-hmm.
because the Nazis took all the radios of the Dutch people just in the surrounding countryside. So they would do these random sweeps, and if they found out that uh, my grandfather had a radio, they would have killed his father. And
Right. Right.
that those kinds of stories I was raised on, because my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather is. When a lot of people think Holocaust survivor, usually the first thing they jump to is Jewish, just because people have probably seen movies like Schindler's List, for example.
Exactly.
And while it's perfectly valid, the Jewish people experienced the Holocaust absolutely. It affected my grandfather, who was a secular Dutchman, for instance,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it affected. There were black people in Germany during the
Mm-hmm.
interwar period because after World War I, they lost control of various colonies. So
Mm-hmm.
either people came to Germany or were kind of stuck there in almost a Casablanca type situation. And during the rise to World War II, uh, Black people were sent to concentration camps, queer people, Roma populations, basically anyone who wasn't, a white, straight German man or woman.
Absolutely.
And I was exposed to a lot of that kind of stuff in a time when it wasn't really talked about. Um,
Mm-hmm.
not not to nearly the same degree. It was before the internet was kind of in its infancy, and it really didn't sort of enter the public household more broadly until like 2000 onwards. Before then, it was kind of
Yeah.
like chat rooms and stuff. So the only way you could really get information on that was if you went to a library, or you spoke
Mm-hmm.
to a survivor directly. And
Mm-hmm.
um, opposite that, my mom was going to the University of Michigan right after the fall of the Soviet Union. And the other thing that I was exposed to was Edward Said. And
Mm-hmm.
Edward Said wrote Orientalism, Culture and Imperialism, and just a very famous Palestinian American activist. And
Yeah.
so I didn't necessarily radicalize right away, despite being exposed to that stuff because I was 10. I didn't fully understand it. But at the same
Right.
time, I feel like when you heard about Palestine and the genocide going on there, when did you first learn about it?
Well, I think it's probably important for me to also clarify that Palestine isn't the only genocide that's ongoing.
Sure,
And it's not the
absolutely.
first. It's not the first. It's not the first time I heard of one that kind of radicalized me. It's a constant push to the left for most people, I think.
Hmm.
And leaving religion was actually kind of my first step, and that happened at 14. So
Hmm.
there, it's a journey for everybody. But Palestine, I first heard about the extent of the damage and the extent of the destruction and the inhumanity and the barbarity like 3 years ago
Hmm.
when the footage started coming out from the ground to America and being shared pretty widely was the first time I actually saw what was happening because before then for a lot of Americans there was conflicting reports of like what's actually happening, what's real, what isn't real. And then October 7th happened,
Hmm.
and the disproportionate response is something that you have to see really to fully grasp the scale of and the impact of.
Hmm.
And so seeing that footage stream in from on the ground of all the bombings and having friends with relatives there who we're talking about, just every day. It's like, yeah, bombs are just kind of part of our life now.
Yes.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's regular. Like there's missiles in the sky every day, and they don't know. People with loved ones in the area have to check in and call on them on a regular basis, just like what's happening now with Iran. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So with Iran, so it's yeah, it it was fairly early as far as America's awareness of all this going down,
Hmm.
but it just got progressively more egregious over time because you pair that with the response on the American side and how callous and um, duplicitous it's been
Hmm.
as they lend support and funding to the Israeli government to help them continue to enact that genocide.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the Biden presidency in particular was
Exactly. Yep.
unusually supportive of
Mhm.
the current prime minister Benjamin
Netanyahu.
Netanyahu was basically
Yeah.
given carte blanche by Biden in a way that I watch a lot of GDF, and so he does a lot of different documentaries about the relationship between American presidents and the state of Israel more broadly, as because
Mhm.
a lot of people um, there is a not so small number of people who think that America is somehow beholden to Israel when in reality,
Right.
Israel is a vassal state that's funded by America,
Mhm.
but the amount of funding has always been kind of like there's always been a certain amount of pushback from American presidents, at least publicly. Like obviously, privately, they're going to do whatever they can to serve the interests of the ruling class. But
Sure.
with Biden, he was incredibly unusually effusive and placating of
Mhm.
Netanyahu and everyone on the Israeli side of the fence. And
Yep.
it's this, you know, the various things that were put into motion leading up to October 7th, where they basically, from what I understand, allowed it to happen. They could have prevented it.
Right.
And a lot of the citizens on the Israeli side of things were killed by their own military. And
Mhm.
there was the Hannibal Directive and various other things going on that basically said, okay, this is something we've been planning for a long time so that they can enter essentially the demolition phase and
Mhm.
demolition with bombs and bulldozers, essentially. And in a
Yeah.
way that it essentially makes the land uninhabitable. So guerrilla warfare it's not like in Vietnam, for instance, where they were using bombs and Agent Orange, and they couldn't necessarily clear
Mhm.
the land to quite the same degree. And
Right.
the Viet Cong were able to essentially tire the American military out. But in the case
Mhm.
of Israel, the strategy has been incredibly ruthless, and
Yeah.
it's essentially a genocide within a open air prison, uh,
Mhm.
shooting fish in a barrel. And
Mhm.
so you definitely, it's, I'm very glad uh, to see that people, I know there are a lot of people who, like you said, follow the money and they essentially don't really stand for anything as liberals other than money, essentially. And they'll dress it up
Yeah.
in the language of liberalism, vis-a-vis Howard Zinn, A People's History of America, and
Mhm.
they're bought, you know, for
Yep.
essentially people in the middle class and the middle to upper classes, and it's not. I guess that's something I wanted to sort of segue in regards to
Mhm.
intersectionality is when we're telling our stories to not just combat what's happening in Palestine, but also things domestically in regards to different people who either follow the money or who don't, you know, so it's kind of like one or the other. And when you're telling your stories, do you have a particular thing that you like to focus on? In my case, for instance, I focus on tokenism. Turfs
Mhm.
was my go-to focus when I was starting out my book series. Do
Mhm.
you focus on um, the stories of survivors? Do you focus on essentially traders of different kinds, class traders, race traders, that kind of thing? Where do you focus on specifically?
Yeah, I mean, my work centers what's best for Black liberation as
Mhm,
a starting point and a center point for a lot of the political work I do. And so when I'm covering something, criticizing something, critiquing something, it's always what impact is this thing having on Black liberation in America,
mhm,
and beyond America in certain cases. And there's a direct through line, if we're talking the intersectionality with the Palestinian people as an example.
mhm,
There's a through line to their suffering. Like you mentioned the Black Panthers earlier. They spoke up about the ongoing disproportionate violence in Palestine in their day,
mhm,
on a regular basis. It was a sticking point for people like Malcolm X, who were outside the Panther movement, but had their own, obviously their own ideals. And I think it's important for us to remember, no matter what our centerpiece is, whether it's liberation, for trans people, whether it's liberation for the Black community or somewhere in between or any other underrepresented group, that it's important for us to remember that we're not fighting an oppressor alone,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
that this battle we're in, even though it's not exactly the same as the battle being fought by these other underrepresented groups, there are major parallels that we not only can draw from, but we should and we need to draw from in order to get away from the silos that we can build for ourselves.
Hmm.
Because intersectionality, that's what it exists for. That's what Pan Africanism exists for. That's why someone like me, who has had maybe one trans person in my actual community within my entire life,
Hmm.
decides that no, actually, this is a group I need to go to bat for because I see the parallels between us. Like
Hmm.
and also trans people are Black. There's no, it's not like there's like this divide that,
Right.
like this artificial divide they try to drive between us. I have people comment sometimes like, yeah, like I see your points and it's good points and good research, but why do you have to bring up trans people? And it's like, but what are you talking about? Trans people are Black. They are us.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
absolutely. It's
like what, why are you painting them as separate or separate groups with a separate agenda? Like everybody
mhm,
is trying to get out from under the boot of white supremacy, of misogyny, of queer phobia, of transphobia, and those things take the shape of just utter dominance from the majority party, and that's usually the white cis hetero people that we always have to battle against.
mhm.
So that is the, that's the vantage point that I'm bringing to this. Is like the divides between us that y'all claim are there don't exist, and if they do exist, they're artificial and very flimsy,
Yeah.
and they don't stand up to scrutiny.
Yeah, absolutely. In regards to the Gothic, just to bring a little Gothic theory into the
Yeah.
conversation, just to maybe educate your audience about that a little bit, is
Mm-hmm.
the theory of abjection by Julia Kristeva. It's the study of revulsion, or essentially, and how things become repulsive and disgusting. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the classic sort of focus, but essentially you have the creation of a state of normality and abjection, to abject something, to throw off into like a zone thereof, a zone of difference, of the
Mm-hmm.
other, the alien, usually kind of icky and gross, but that grossness doesn't have to be like overtly disgusting. It can also just be something
Mm-hmm.
that's essentially on within what Giorgio Agamben would call the state of exception. You're thrown into a site of receiving violence from the state or people who serve the state. And it is essentially a situation where you become, uh, in the most extreme cases, homo sacer. And homo sacer comes from antiquity. It was a position
Yeah.
in Rome where to be killed without ceremony, which I always thought was a little bit paradoxical because it's still a ceremony. It's just it's treated without respect or reverence, but it's still something that if you watch a zombie apocalypse, it's still
Mm-hmm.
there's a great deal of satisfaction and delight that fascism takes in killing the enemy. For instance, they have
Mm-hmm.
so much dogma tied up in that.
Mm-hmm.
The enemy is both weak and strong. The cults of death, machismo,
Yeah.
pacifism is trafficking with the enemy, that kind of stuff. And abjection is essentially a mirror, a black mirror that is
Mm.
usually is canonically employed by the state to dogmatize violence against minorities. And
Yeah.
that can include people who don't necessarily look um repulsive, because a lot of queer people, for instance, can look ordinary. They don't necessarily.
Straight passing. Yeah.
Yeah, straight
100%.
passing,
Yeah.
exactly. And me for existence, usually I don't tend to talk in a fairer voice under specific
Mm.
circumstances. If I'm with other trans people, it's It's something that tends to come out more. I feel more comfortable doing it. But if I'm just, it's also, I just like the sound of my voice as it is naturally, where I don't
Yeah,
have to affect it. And
sure.
Judith Butler called it gender trouble in the 90s, though, where the moment you kind of start to deviate away from that heteronormative standard,
Mm-hmm.
you people get people who are in the cave uh, aren't able to really process that. They experience
Mm-hmm.
revulsion, you know. So per
Mm-hmm.
like Chris Davis' objection process, they'll be like, "Oh, that's the enemy," and that can manifest in different ways. It can be like an overt reactionary sort of approach, or it can be more, well, it's not the right time for trans people to have, you know, their time in the sun, you know. So
Yeah,
they make
which
those.
everybody's heard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's essentially the same argument that Martin Luther King was talking about with white moderates,
Yep.
where
Yep.
um and queer people, the tragedy of trans people from Stonewall onwards, because the first Pride was a
Mm-hmm.
riot, um,
Mm-hmm.
is we have constantly been told by cis queer people, especially like white homosexual men in particular, uh,
Mm-hmm.
cis lesbians historically have been much kinder to us, and I think white male privilege tends to go to homosexual men's heads sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
even with like just for example, Stephen Fry, he was a friend
Yeah.
of J.K. Rowling, where for
Mm-hmm.
the longest time he decided, oh yeah, I'm just friends with J.K. Rowling, and I'll do audiobooks for her shitty
Yep.
novels, and
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of times, you know, like you said, with trans people, the objection process is usually quite subtle. It's often
Mm-hmm.
a very clear, but not necessarily witch hunter kind of division, even though that's basically what's happening. Oh, well, why are you talking about
Mm-hmm.
trans rights? You should only talk about the rights of Black people, for instance.
Right.
And so I really, when I saw your latest video on MDLs, I really appreciated that you mentioned the fact that lynchings and killings more broadly, you mentioned trans people within that. And
Mm-hmm.
just now you mentioned that, yeah, no, trans people are Black
Right.
oftentimes. And I've worked with a lot of trans people, BIPOC trans people. My husband is Irish Mali, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
and my metamour is Aboriginal Jewish. So I,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of other people that I work with as well, I try and have, it's not like a quota. It's I want to be able to make sure that everyone feels welcome, because the whole
Yep.
point is that we have to fight together, because the moment you start doing the homeless thing and you have the one person locked up in the basement
Exactly.
being tortured, it's still
Mm-hmm.
fascism. And
Exactly.
I really just wanted to say that, you know, it made me feel very safe coming to you, just because, for example, a trans woman was just stabbed to death in Maine. Juju
Mm.
Blessing was on a hike with her friends when someone approached her with a knife and stabbed her to death. And
It's terrible.
one thing that you said specifically was Black people don't hang themselves from trees. And
Right.
having to explain to people around you that kind of thing, like, look, this isn't normal. We don't, this, bury your gaze is something that only exists in
Mm.
shows. We don't, we're actually
Mm-hmm.
not like a suicide cult. We don't want to die, you know, kind of thing.
Right.
And
Exactly.
is there, keeping that in mind,
Mm-hmm.
how do you, how are you able to sort of find ways to keep going and focus on
Mm.
things like that that can be so it can be draining sometimes to have to wake up and hear the news of people you
Man.
know or people in your community who have been affected by violence.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure you have, just as pointed of an answer to that question as well from your vantage point. But from my vantage point, it's it's tough. I mean, it's exhausting period. Just making content about anything is exhausting. I'm
Mhm.
I'm a filmmaker by for a living, so yeah, I'm getting tired of editing if I'm being honest with you. But um
I hear you there. That's probably the hardest thing is editing for me.
yeah, and I love it. Like I'm an artist, and
Mhm.
editing is where the art comes in. But it can get tiring, and so when you layer on top of that the fact that I have to tell these stories of people who look like me, who could have just been me, who could have been me easily, or somebody I know, or somebody in my family, somebody I just talked to yesterday, and they're being lynched en masse across the country in broad daylight in many instances.
Mhm.
Just since I made that video, two more people have been lynched in broad daylight,
Yeah.
and it's I mean, it's the reason that that video was easily, I think, the most passionate I've ever been on camera. It's just it pulls feelings out of you of exasperation. It's like, what can I like? Look, obviously, I'm a radical, so I'm not a person who's going to be tap dancing for white approval. Like, I don't care
Mhm.
if my white viewers feel some kind of way about the things I talk about, or if they feel slightly offended when I attack white people and white institutions for the things they've done historically to black people. But there is a point where, just like in that video, I'm putting it in their hands. Like, white people, y'all have a problem to address.
Mhm.
Is what I said in the video. And that's very much the case. If you're not noticing the patterns, and you call yourself a liberal, and you call yourself someone who is on the side of minorities and underrepresented groups, this is the time to do something about it.
Yes.
And so the frustration comes and the exhaustion comes from feeling like you're talking to it's landing on deaf ears,
Mm.
and that people aren't appreciating your humanity. It's like, do y'all just see me as an entertainer or an educator or whatever you see me as on YouTube, like a talking head? Or
Mhm.
do you not see that I'm a human and I'm black, and people like me are being exterminated,
Mhm.
and you don't have any inclination to do something about it whatsoever? It's a call to action from people who can actually move the needle on this topic easier than we can.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah, absolutely. Um I guess the most frustrating thing I've noticed is we're trying to appeal to people who have more power than us, and
right.
the fact that like we have to find some way to get them to pay attention, and it
Yeah.
isn't always you can't just appeal to their the Martin Luther King approach, appeal to their the angels of their better nature, their
Yeah.
conscience.
No. No. Absolutely not. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. The greater group um has purposely suppressed their humanity,
Mhm.
and appealing to the humanity of, white people as a whole is not something I care to do anymore. So that wasn't really the purpose of that video. It was to really just let all my anger and I guess, yeah, just pure fury at the complacency of the greater liberal liberal body within the United States. It's not just white people, it's everybody who calls themselves liberals and allows this shit to continue.
Mhm.
uh it was not so much me begging for them to step up, it was me demanding that they step up, or quite frankly, stop consuming black entertainment and taking our lingo and trying to be like us if you're not going to do the bare minimum
Mhm.
of defending us when we're being wiped out.
Well, yeah, otherwise it's just a repeat of like the Harlem Renaissance, or
Yeah.
where it's a constant the appropriation of the colonized and their culture,
Yep.
their media in ways that uh, I think Jordan Peele hit on it quite succinctly in Get Out, where it's cool
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that can be taken and used in a very vampiric kind of way by the in
Mm-hmm.
group, which does tend to be, is America's a white supremacist country, and
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of thing it's a reality, even though they present it in that film as a Twilight Zone episode. The paradox
Right.
being is that it's you're using a ghost story to touch upon a current barbarity that's for these people been pushed to the margins. It's something that they don't have
Mm-hmm.
to face. And
Mm-hmm.
the paradox is you have to sort of get their attention with entertainment because for a lot of these people,
Yep.
it's the only place they'll encounter it. But then you have to, I call it the scratching method. You
Mm-hmm.
scratch someone to, if you scratch a liberal, a fascist bleeds. But sometimes, just sometimes, not
Mm-hmm.
always, you can have you can direct the flow of the conversation, which can get kind of bloody. And when I say bloody, I mean like passionate, like where
Yeah. Conflict.
yeah. And there's
Yeah. Yeah.
pushing back on this expectation, like you said, for us to tap dance around the feelings
Right.
of those who are basically profiting off our deaths as different
Mm-hmm.
minorities. And it's like, look, I don't have time to
Yeah.
do this. It's people are dying. And the
Mm-hmm.
reality is, one thing I do like to remind these individuals is that when they're finished with us, they'll come for you.
Exactly. My point
And
exactly. Like the divisions between us, that comes back to that point that there are no divisions between us. Because if you think there are, if you sit back like a lot of people in the black community did when ICE was rampaging through the Hispanic community,
mhm,
and through the Latinx community, and you think that you're exempt from it because you were born here and you're African American, it's the one benefit we have is that we can't be deported.
mhm,
um, you you have this all wrong because not only were they not going over after just Latinx people, they were deporting Haitian people.
mhm,
What? How do they see Haitian people? How do they see anybody else from any Caribbean nation?
mhm.
They just see them as black people. Like, and so they're just doing what they can to the people they dislike. And once they get done with them, they're going to continue because they're already going after us, but they're going to continue to go after you in new and more creative ways. And people who don't see that are missing the forest for the trees.
I definitely want to say that your appeal to your audience and by extension mine, honestly, because I feel like we speak to the same, larger, just we're trying to reach as many people as we can. And while speaking for different minorities, we're addressing like the majority as much as we possibly can from where we are. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you know, liberal audiences, or, liberal people in my audience, hi, I see you. You need to have a conversation with your racist friends. You need to put pressure
Mm-hmm.
on police departments. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like you have to be able to take a stand that actually, for once in your life, can affect you in a possibly, at least in the short term, negative way. Uh,
Yep.
and I remember Squid Tips is an activist out of Seattle that I interviewed before, and they specifically made a video titled "White People Shit Ruined My Community," and them being a white straight guy. I call them grunglers. Don't ask me
mm,
where it comes from, but it's this Gen Z meme that essentially describes a straight guy who's cool. Someone who's
mm,
the way you described it. You're like, white people, put yourself at the front of the picket line. They will hesitate to shoot
right.
you. And
Yeah.
gruntlers are kind of like that for trans people, basically. And
Mm,
it's like there's always that cautionary tale about white knights and stuff like that, but also at the same time, someone who does that kind of role in a way where it's how it's actually supposed to work, like where
Exactly.
it's like, okay, if you're gonna hit anyone, hit me, you know. It's the 6 foot tall,
Yep.
200 pound white dude, you know, and I'm like, my
Mm-hmm.
hero. And I remember them talking about that as a white straight man who has a trans person, a trans indigenous person, uh, in America that they're dating and have had to
Mm-hmm.
stand up for. So they brought up a lot of different points while defending their partner and other people. One of which is white people, just white straight people in particular, tend to hoard advantage and
Mm-hmm.
power. Like they're like,
Yep.
okay, what's in it for me? How can I? They almost treat it like money in the bank, and it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I can't do anything unless I have this much, and then and they're always like calculating risk in the most frugal, uh, risk averse way possible, instead of
Right.
you have to act like your own life is in danger or the lives of
Mm-hmm.
those you care about are in danger.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
uh the way one thing that really radicalized me in particular as a person with white privilege is, and when I was in the closet, having, you know, passing privilege, cis privilege, just because at the time I wasn't identifying as trans, so I could pass,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just as a white straight guy. And the moment I started spending more time with people who were openly different than me, I started dating
Mm-hmm.
non-binary, gender non-conforming people more broadly, and then
Yeah.
spending more time with people whose skin wasn't white, and
Mm-hmm.
learning learning about their struggles, and realizing that, like, what my privilege was, and then coming out and being like, okay, I'm going to, I came out of the closet when I wrote my first book. I put my name on it, you know, and I'm like, this is me. This
Mm.
I'm not going to go into the closet. I knew
Yeah.
trans people who told me, they're like, this is dangerous what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because one in particular, they could see where the wind was blowing. They're like, don't do this. You're putting your life at risk. And I'm like, yeah, but that's what activism is. We have to.
It Yeah, that's like the day. If there's a definition for activism, like it, all activism that is worth anything is dangerous. Like
Mhm,
literally every form of it. What I'm doing on the internet, when I go to a protest and film with them, when, anything we do that, especially is going against the norm.
mm,
If it's going against the norm, then by its very nature, it is activism and it is dangerous. I've received every slur under the book,
mhm,
every name you can think to call a person, whether black or otherwise, based on several of my stances. Not being religious, and then calling out white people and racial violence, and that's real. Like, I'm a public figure. My address can be found pretty easily on the internet from somebody who knows what they're doing. You know what I'm saying?
mhm,
So this is something that I carry with me, and I'm essentially okay with, because like I said, there's a fork in the road where you have to decide what you're living for, what you're doing this for, why you even want to be somebody that people know and look up to, and who some people put on a pedestal you don't belong on. Why do you want any of this in the first place? What
mhm,
is your purpose in speaking about anything? And what do you stand for? If you don't stand for anything, why are you even here? Like, these are questions I ask myself.
mhm,
And if the answer isn't compelling enough, that means you need to change something. And for me, it was changing the fact that I was a liberal and I was just sitting on the fence my whole life and not willing to really put my neck out and risk anything reputationally or, financially, all this type of stuff. you're not actually doing anything if you're not putting any risk, anything on the line. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Oh yeah, even uh, yeah, absolutely. In my case, the one of the radicalizing things for me, because I initially my area of study was ludology, or the study of play and games, and
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a review of Doom Eternal where I said
Mm.
there doesn't appear to be any women or trans people in this game.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of strange, especially considering
Yeah.
that Doom Guy in the franchise was actually a gender swap of Ellen Ripley from Aliens, because the
Mm-hmm.
original game was supposed to be like an Aliens reskin. They couldn't
Alien
get the
shooter. Yeah,
rights,
yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
they're like, okay, it's on Mars, and let's just make him a man. So basically, make
Yeah.
Rambo a man again. And I remember writing that, and I was still in the closet at the time. It was in
Mm-hmm.
the middle of COVID, and I I remember writing that, and then suddenly, even though I was still in the closet, I was all of the context that I had were like just were gone like that. Like
Oof.
all of these people were like, I mean, yeah, it happened pretty quickly because people are like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're defending women and trans people. Uh,
Yeah. In the gaming community, especially. Like, oof.
I found out
Yikes.
pretty quickly that yeah, there's kind of a fascist presence in
Yeah.
our white goose and
Yeah.
other people like that. So I actually have a smaller. It's not quite a book. It's like a novella, I guess, but which
Mm-hmm.
is essentially just a research document of different streamers. Nowadays, it might be someone like Asmongold, or before that it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
Vosh, but before Vosh even, it would be people like our white goose who were literally just neo-Nazis in the gaming community. And
Yeah. 100%.
uh, it turns out, though, that they have a lot of defenders who are of that more moderate type. And
Mm-hmm.
the risk for me initially was I didn't even realize I was taking a risk, because I just thought, well, who doesn't want to defend women and trans people? Because I had already been
Right.
dating a non-binary person for several years, and I was just like, they're
Mm-hmm.
human, just like us,
Yep.
And then I realized, oh, I'm trans, because after several years of taking the risk, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really even have the language to understand. That's kind of a difficulty with queer existence, is we usually kind of have to take whatever language is on hand, which half the time is usually like slurs, bury your gays, vaudeville, Rocky Horror Picture
Mm-hmm.
Show, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Where uh, my partner in grad school, their go-to was exploitation media and twinks, which might sound kind of strange, but there's like literally a whole subgenre of queer media dedicated to the brutalization of twinks. And
Mm.
similar to black exploitation media in the 1970s, where
Yeah.
it kind of walks the line between liberation and exploitation, but it's
Yep.
that gray area. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had to basically leave the comfort of my home, go overseas, have an adventure, meet someone different than me, learn the language, start using it, basically get hazed, and then be like, you know what? I don't want to, if this is what it means to be a member of the in group, I don't want to be that.
Mm.
I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
happier being with
Mm-hmm.
people who have their humanity, who aren't going to just throw other people under the bus the moment push comes to shove. And
Man. Yeah, kind of nailed it. I mean, just like the reference reminded me of because like you said hazed, and I was hazed in a college fraternity in at Georgia Tech, and I made a documentary about that, about hazing, and about that experience that a freshman goes through. as they get essentially indoctrinated into a fraternity,
Mhm.
and you're 19 and you think that it's the right thing to do to
Yep.
let other men beat you up that are barely older than you, and then turn around and do that to other men after that. And sororities do it too,
Yep.
and they've been killing people. And it's like my documentary was made because it was like, okay, I have this platform, I have to speak up about this phenomenon because it's killing people. It's killing people who are there to go to school and leave that place and get a job are dying. And so it becomes a necessity. Like you said, there's a point where it's like, all right, I can't be part of this anymore.
Mhm.
And that that hazing moment really, should, I think, for everybody, wake you up as to like, no, what I'm doing is right. The people I'm defending deserve to be defended, and uh any consequences, that come as a result of this, I know I'm on the right side of the argument, so I don't really care as much,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. That, insofar as, like you mentioned hazing and how when you're exposed to something like that at a young age and you think, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like the exact number, like not to say age is just a number, but you could be in your
Right,
in
right.
your 30s. In my case,
Hmm.
when I was raped, I was in my 30s during COVID, and I don't really know how to describe it other than a part of me thought that it was I didn't realize it was even abuse, you know? I thought, "Oh, this is
Mm,
totally normal. They're taking care of me." And
mm,
that's what they're doing. They're not, I didn't even call it rape until I got away, until I was able to spend time with other people who told me, "No, honey, this isn't okay. Did you want to have sex with this person? No. Okay.
mm.
It's rape." I was like, "Oh." And I, with hazing in particular, is also, I think, it's normalized within popular media to a certain extent, from like the National Lampoon films like Animal House, and
Yeah,
was it Van Wilder, I think, was a more recent
yeah.
one, with
Hmm.
Ryan Gosling. But this idea that, oh, this is totally normal. It's usually kind of cartoonish. Like it's not.
Reynolds, by the way, Ryan Reynolds.
Oh,
I just want
sorry.
to make sure you
Yeah,
caught
Ryan
that.
Gosling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wrong Ryan. And they is there what when you got away from that experience, did that happen while you were still in school, or is it something that
No,
you
I
did later?
yeah, no. As far as hazing goes, it was something that like I stepped away from when I was in school. Like my last year, I was like, I don't want to be involved in this anymore, and I just kind of stepped outside of the new pledgee process and bringing people into the chapter and all that.
Mhm.
But then years after, like after all this work experience, I'm already a YouTuber. I already have a platform, and it's 13, 14 years after, like, since I had pledged, and it took really one story of a young man, a young black man dying in Louisiana while pledging, for me to realize that I have this platform, these people who watch my work, and if I don't do something about this, there's other young people who look just like me who are going to die.
Mhm.
And so it's like I had a decision to make. What do you do? Do you put yourself at risk and cut off all ties to everyone you knew in college and all that stuff? Like I can't go to homecoming now, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Or do you just, remain complicit and just keep being a YouTuber, don't talk about it, never bring it up, and somebody else will handle it, quote unquote. But
Mhm.
no, like I am that somebody else. I'm the only person, I mean, even to this day, who's made anything similar to what I made on that level of production that reached that many people. And I've had people tell me that it saved their lives, it saved their children's lives.
Hmm.
So that is a responsibility that we have with these platforms. Is like, if you're purporting to talk about things that matter, and you call yourself someone who reports on the news or in any way, shape, or form, what are you going to do when you're confronted with a situation where you can make tangible change in people's lives, but it's going to cost you something? What decision do you make?
Hmm.
And what's your ethos as a creator in the first place, if that's even a hard decision to make? Like, it makes you answer some questions about yourself.
I think some people in that situation too never really, it's all about evolution is essentially a response to pressure over time and
Hmm.
various stressors that, force people to change. And I think people closer to the margins can change in different ways. Obviously, some
Hmm.
people are going to change for the better in a more positive. Obviously, with moral relativism, when I say better, I mean workers' rights versus states' rights. But
Hmm.
some people are going to favor the struggle of workers and nature more broadly, animals, the environment, what have you. Just anything that isn't a white European man, a capitalist, and the system that they belong
Yeah.
to. The way that I often describe it is the state and by extension capital are white, straight, and male.
Hmm.
And that translates, ideologically speaking, to Cartesian, settler colonial, and heteronormative. And
Hmm.
essentially, there's a little bit more to it than that. There's also monopolies. There's the monopoly of violence,
Hmm.
terror, and the one that I came up with, which is monsters, which usually are a way of poetically describing like violence in shorthand, for instance, because
Yeah. Yeah.
like trans people or black people are often
Hmm.
monsters in stories. Even
Yep.
if you watch Alien, for instance, uh, you might look at a lot of people look at Ellen Ripley. She's the heroine. She's the gothic heroine specifically. She's the only one
Hmm.
that says, "Don't let the alien on the ship," and the allegory behind that film in particular is actually a slave narrative where the
Mm.
ship is called the Nostromo, which comes from a
Yep.
Joseph Conrad novel, and
Hmm.
the eighth passenger is literally a stowaway slave. It's told through the
Mm.
modern Prometheus, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein slash
Yeah.
Ozymandias, but her husband's poem. But the xenomorph is essentially sort of a hybrid between a black person and a queer person. And
Mm.
incidentally, the guy in the suit who played the xenomorph was a black man. And
Yeah. Yeah. That I knew.
I've heard, and it's kind of a black guy in a gimp suit, basically, is what's going on with
Hmm.
that. And it's the kind of thing that honestly, I mean, I saw Alien when I was like 9 or something, but
Right.
I didn't really realize like one thing that I do with my work on my side of things is literary analysis. What Black people call woke originally is essentially a form of like race consciousness, things that make you more aware of the violence that you would experience, from what I
Hmm.
understand, as a black person versus the state, essentially. Like you have to be woke to survive. And
Yeah.
in regards to queerness, woke for us, and it kind of goes back to Marx and class consciousness, and I
Hmm.
call it intersectional consciousness because we don't want to just be woke in one particular way that's reductive. Like you don't want to just
Sure.
be woke in like a racial way, but because like you said, trans
Hmm.
people can be black, for instance. So I'm like, okay, well, we should be woke in racial ways that intersect with issues of class and
Hmm.
culture more broadly. I mean, to be fair, like race is a social construct, but I feel
Yeah. It
like
is.
I feel like race is like such a big thing. Like white supremacy is
Mm.
everywhere. And
Hmm.
when you're dealing with transphobia, for instance, you're invariably going to be dealing with racism. because if
Mm-hmm.
you scratch a turf or a swerf, a racist bleeds. Because
Absolutely.
there's a really good essay by John the Duncan called "The Fascist or the Roots of Neoliberal Fascism," where they talk
Mm-hmm.
about like authoritarian governance under neoliberalism, but then
Yep.
fascist gender norms and racial values, essentially. So,
Absolutely.
um, and
Absolutely.
and that is, I approach that from like a poetic or monstrous side of things, and I really value the fact that you approach it. You're you're able to approach it from like a video essayist, a documentarian
Mm-hmm.
kind of approach,
Mm-hmm.
and but you're still able to like bring your own life stories into it that to someone who hasn't experienced those kinds of things almost sounds like horror stories, you know?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
have you ever told someone your experiences and had them go like, "Wow, that's uh like not like a negative response, but they're just it's not that they can't empathize with you, but for them it almost sounds like it's unreal."
Oh yeah. No, 100%. And I mean, just thinking about the reactions to the hazing video, there's a lot of people who, because I mean, that was a just direct story from something I lived through, and there was a lot of reactions like this is a horror story, like this is something out of a movie. I mean, there's literally a movie I clipped in that video that exists, that tells the story of what black hazing is like. So
Mhm.
the parallels are always there. And the stories are there to help make it um, touch people spiritually
Mhm.
and get past the facade of apathy that a lot of people have up. It requires stories to do so. Humans are storytelling creatures.
Mhm.
It's one of the things that separates us from every other animal, is that we have the capacity to tell and receive stories. And
Mhm.
it's one of the most effective things. It's always been one of the most effective motivating factors for human beings, unifying, organizing stories.
Mhm.
And that's what most video essayists do, is we tell stories. And so you take necessary, crucial information, turn it into a story, and make sure that some of your humanity is left in this final presentation so that people can connect to what you're trying to say instead of just digesting it like entertainment. And so
Exactly.
that's where it comes in. You have to reach past just entertainment with these issues.
Yeah, you can certainly, I suppose, make a story entertaining, but
Yeah,
provided that, like you say, it's not just for entertainment exclusively.
yeah,
And that's I really agree with your argument there. You really hit the nail on the head, just because when I'm telling stories where that's essentially what I'm doing, like with either my own experiences or the experiences of my friends, where I will oftentimes invite them on to talk about their experiences and just like what's it like being queer, what's it like being a sex worker, and
exactly.
I've had disabled people come on and talk about being disabled, uh, and a common sort of follow through for all of us is that we are treated like creatures of myth. We are
Exactly.
we're treated like the Gorgon, someone to
Mm-hmm.
behead and use like a weapon
Mm-hmm.
for others, but not necessarily listen to because
Yep.
we're seen as repulsive, or we have, the snakes for hair kind of thing. We're a little prickly sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm a bit of a weirdo, so I'm like, what's wrong with snakes for hair? But I, I certainly I can understand, to a certain degree how people might have trepidations initially, especially if you spend your whole life being told that someone's bad, and then you round
Yeah.
a corner and you're having a conversation with someone that you're told
Mhm.
your whole life they're the enemy. And
Mhm.
I I guess one thing that I wanted to sort of wrap up on is
Mm-hmm.
with, are there any, like, for me in particular, one hurdle that I find among, not among like liberals even, or just openly reactionary people on the right, but I find a lot of difficulty in organizing, being from people who tell us that we can't organize.
Yeah.
And so I kind of have a bone to pick with not all Marxist-Leninists, mind you, but basically
Mm-hmm.
people who say, oh, we need the state, not each other, but the state, and we don't want to
Nah.
decentralize, and God forbid,
Mm-hmm.
that we try and, do something that historically has been proven to work. It worked.
Right. On our own
Mhm.
without the state. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't need it's like telling a sex worker they need a pimp, or a woman they need a husband.
I completely agree, actually. Yeah, great parallels. Great parallels.
um have you ever experienced like, the one example I'll give is, I had someone whose work I consumed for a long time that I respected up until they started becoming more reactionary. Bad Empanada.
Mm-hmm.
They made essays on Palestine and Manifest Destiny, and
Mm-hmm.
relatively, academic historiography type stuff. And I was like, okay, this is, relatively speaking, perfectly fine material. I found it
Yeah.
useful. And then they decided, relatively recently, within the October 2025 thereabouts, they were crashing out on, and they were basically going after furries, disabled people, and plural people in particular. A very
Mm-hmm.
odd combination. And I was like, well, Bad Empanada, I just reached out to him on Blue Sky. You may as well call my friends and I useless eaters. And he turned right back around and said, oh, absolutely. I think you belong in the mines. And
Mm.
that kind of thing, he doesn't explicitly identify as a Marxist-Leninist, though he spends a lot of time apologizing for that type of
Sure.
bullshit. And I've one thing that the hardest thing for me was to get other people to even, I'm like, look, I have this document. Here's him calling us useless eaters. Could someone maybe talk about this? And this isn't me asking you to or anything, but just in regards to the hardest, most uphill battle for me as a minority is getting other people to take me seriously when I'm like, look, there's a member of this larger leftist umbrella who's acting sus. Could someone who's trying to like drive a wedge between different people so he'll sing the virtues of the Palestinians, but then punch down at trans people like we're all
Right. Right.
vampires or something. And
Exactly.
have you ever in the left encountered anything like that yourself? Just in terms of people who should be your allies who say, "Oh yeah, on paper, Marxist-Leninism or something comparable to that is all about the emancipation and the continued the liberation of black people," but then they don't really practice what they preach.
Oh, 100%. And we can go back to the Panthers for that. I mean, there's leaders within the Black Panther Party that were credibly accused of sexual assault.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like we have to deal with the inherent contradictions even in the people that we seek to hold up the most.
Hmm.
Um, for me, part of my recent crusade, because I recently came out as anti-religious and atheist,
Hmm.
and part of my crusade against religion is the fact that I think that is the undercurrent behind some of the people you just identified who claim all this political liberation ideology while also turning around and punching down at trans people and gay people and queer people in general. It's because they're either religious themselves or they still hold on to the trappings of religion. I know within the Black community, that is the reason, because we are inundated with religion.
Hmm.
We are probably easily one of the least secular races that exists, just because of how we were socialized in America around Christianity.
Hmm.
It permeates everything Black. Even if somebody says they don't identify as religious, they still have the vestiges of it. They still have the revulsion of people who are different from them, people who are trans. They don't get it. They're not trying to get it.
Hmm.
And they have this whole separate but equal, ironically, ideology about it.
Hmm.
And when, under scrutiny, of course it doesn't hold up. But to me, religion is one of the core problems in really all of society. I'm pretty much an abolitionist when it comes to religion.
Hmm.
And I just don't think it has any place in modern society, because it's reliant on doctrine that hates certain groups of people, very, very clearly hates certain groups of people.
And this is mild pushback. This is not this isn't it's not even really pushback, because I know that you're
No, pushback, man. It's fine.
um
we're not arguing. It's fine.
yeah, yeah.
Also, I didn't mean all religions. I think when I start drilling down like that, I'm talking about Christianity in
Yes,
America
yeah,
usually.
yep, yep.
But yeah, go ahead.
Like Abrahamic religions under Western thought.
Abrahamic religions. Yeah, that's mostly what I'm going at. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mostly that yeah, I was just gonna say, for instance, when Juju Blessings was killed, I had to find a way to. I've written about other people who have died as well. Next Benedict, Aaron Bushnell, martyred
Mm-hmm.
himself for the cause. Renee Good was shot, and then Jonathan
Yep.
Joss was shot defending
Mm-hmm.
his husband. And
Mm-hmm.
these kinds of instances, every time I talk about one of these things, I try and find some way to mention it through like an abject lens, because abjection is normally something that can it can help further the status quo, capital, and predation through the state, or we can turn it around and bounce it back at our enemies. And
Yeah.
when Jesper, or when Juju rather was killed, I found myself drawing upon Mali culture and oral traditions that are tied to spirituality. They have um, they have several different things. One called the haka, and you may have seen it at sporting events like rugby,
Yeah. The New
and
Zealanders do that, right? Yeah.
yep. And it's almost
Mm-hmm.
like it's a essentially a threat display where you're meeting your opponents on the field as equals. And it's not,
Mm-hmm.
when people are like, oh, it's a threat display, you must be enemies. I'm like, yeah, kinda, but it's also a sign of respect, because it's like, well,
Right.
you're
Right.
you're worthy to me, my enemy, finally a worthy foe.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
they have the haka, but they also have something called the pukana. And the pukana,
Mm-hmm.
the way it was exposed to me as a threat display, specifically, I remember seeing it from Mali women, where they have these markings. They don't have markings on their face for the most part. They have markings on their lower lip and their chin.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll jut them forward as a sign of their ancestors while flashing the whites of their eyes. And to show the whites of your eyes is to show the enemy your soul. And that
Mm.
the soul is like a powerful thing, your mana, your tapu. And it
Yeah.
is a defense sort of mechanism where you ask the potential enemy, anyways, the person who's approaching you, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, oh ho, do you dare approach me? Are you here for peace or war? And oftentimes the pukana is something that is meant to be a threat display where they stamp the ground and call the bones of the ancestors to rise, and
Yeah.
the dead, the ancestors are at our back. And I've seen it as a threat display that is essentially evoking, the Mali have gods and goddesses of war, similar to the ancient Greeks, where you had Athena and oh, who was the other one? Ares, I think.
Hmm.
And or Ares was more like raw, aggressive, masculine, me dumb stab stuff, whereas
Right.
Athena was more crafty. So, for
Hmm.
instance, Odysseus during the Trojan War with the Trojan horse, he implemented the Trojan horse, but it was actually built by Athena. So
Hmm.
there are like different like gendered ways to approach that are mythical. You know, they're in the Bible they call it apocryphal stories, where they're not. When people hear these stories, they generally accept that they're not actually historically accurate. You know, Jonah wasn't actually in
Sure.
the belly of a whale or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's more about like the moral side of things. And
Hmm.
even though
Hmm.
I think that Christianity could have some Christ, for all intents and purposes, if you get past the way that he's used to make people feel guilty, he's a
Hmm.
relatively okay character. He's basically a zombie.
Right.
He's a zombie communist. And
That's my takeaway too. That
yeah.
Jesus is like the most appealing part of this whole thing. Yeah,
Hmm.
100%.
And if you can kind of, and the problem with Christianity is there's a lot of colonial dogma tied to what Max Weber would call the
Yep.
Protestant ethic, and work
Hmm.
is holy, and it's pitted against essentially nature as something to sort of pimp out in different ways, depending.
Yeah.
And that is so. If I'm pushing back, it's more just being like the morality of the moral arguments and plights of pre-colonial language from the Mali, for instance. They will often take these concepts and use them in a post-colonial way. So
Sure.
with disabled people, for instance, they call it taonga, and taonga means treasure. So the
Hmm.
way that the Mali would treat disabled people, or just people who were neurodivergent, they could be autistic, they could be gender nonconforming. Indigenous people on Turtle Island would call it two-spirit people, uh, and
Yeah.
and these different kinds of treasure, as opposed to what the Mali would describe as Mukutu, or Mukutu being a curse, and there's another word as well, a deficit, where these are it's basically foisted on to Mali and just minorities more broadly under capitalism as
Hmm.
predominantly Christian, and these days
Hmm.
Judeo-Christian values through Orientalism, and that's a whole nother conversation. But it's sinful, and there's this whole, if you can find a way to use religion in a way that doesn't tap into that sinful sort of there's sinners and saints, and if you can kind of remove that, I think there's definitely value. But like you said, with in the Black community, for example, um Christianity has been foisted onto them in evangelical ways that on one hand allowed them to come together, but also
Hmm.
foisted homophobia
Yeah.
onto you guys.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's so I can understand, and it's the same kind of thing that exists in white culture as well. You know, it's
Yep.
basically white people took their problems and gave them to you guys, and
Hmm.
it's so I definitely understand what you mean. So I didn't I wanted to say I agree with you, and I just wanted to add a little bit of
Hmm.
extra, you know.
No, no, it's all good, man. Extra context is always welcome, and these are really um, wide sweeping religions with 1,000 denominations. So there's never going to be a way for me to fully encompass everything that these religions represent to everybody.
Mhm.
But I know that there's some issues with that book, and there's some issues with the things that that book imparts to has imparted to my ancestors and everybody that came after, that leads to the current environment we're in, where somebody can, with a straight face, claim that trans people are both separate from black people, and that trans people don't deserve, to have the same liberties and rights and access and everything else that we have.
Hmm.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it can be definitely dispiriting. Is there anything else that you would one just kind of like to say to your audience and mine, more broadly, and then if you want to plug anything at the end?
Sure. I appreciate you having me on. First off, I didn't acknowledge this earlier because there's so many thoughts flying around. But
Hmm.
you spoke about your sexual assault. I'm really sorry that happened to you.
It's okay. I appreciate it. Just because it's very common. Bad Empanada, for instance, accused me of being a pedophile, essentially a sex pest. You know, oh, if you are around other people, you'd sexually assault them. Like I can't be in according to people like him, I can't
I hate that
be
shit, man.
in the room with other people. You know, so
I hate that shit.
just
That shit is toxic. It's
yeah,
toxic.
and so I
The
really value that just you acknowledging that really
yeah,
means a lot.
of course, of course. I mean, it's the whole journey I've been on is making sure that I take every opportunity to acknowledge the humanity of the people in the fight with me, quite frankly. And there's a lot of myths out there. I'm sure your audience will already know everything, but like, there's many people in my audience who I still have to have this conversation with, and I'll continue to do so.
Mhm.
I'm discussing the fact that there is no quote unquote gay gene pretty soon in a whole separate discussion. There's a lot of people under the mistaken impression that that's a real thing. Um,
What is gay chain?
no, gay gene,
Oh, gay
as
gene.
in like, yeah, yeah, like as far as like, yeah, being able to like, yeah, just the nature versus nurture thing, and just the way people who are religious talk about gay people, talk about trans people, as if it's either a decision or as if there's one specific gay gene. Both of these are problematic, you know. Um,
I guess
so yeah, that's
just to weigh in very quickly on that, just based on my own experiences,
yeah, yeah,
it's sort of
please,
like we don't generally choose to be who we are, like insofar as
exactly.
if someone's trans, but there is still kind of an element of choice involved insofar as how do
Right.
we want to identify publicly, but like
Exactly.
I had thoughts that were not conforming since I was small. You know,
Mhm.
I was friends with all the neighborhood girls. They'd braid my hair, protect me from bullies.
Mhm.
And then I looked at I used to write a lot of like fantasy stuff, and I'm like, huh, why is it I'm always writing about girls? Why do I watch Sailor Moon? Why
Mhm.
and I wrote this character named Glenn who was a goblin who could shift shape, and they were male initially, but they could shapeshift into a female body if they wanted to. And it
Yeah.
was sort of a combination of different things, but
Mhm.
uh, like Elphaba from Wicked and
Mhm.
She-Hulk and a couple other things. But I I remember trying to figure that out. Well, is it just in my genes, or because
Right, right.
I have an identical twin who's
Mhm.
like, you know, cishet, completely just a plain Jane normal dude.
Right.
And that's actually pretty common with identical twins, incidentally, is that
Mhm.
with Orange is the New Black, I forget the actress's name who was in that, the black trans woman in that show. There's a scene
Yeah.
before she transitions. It's actually her twin brother who's playing
Mm.
her before the transition. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And I was like, oh, no shit. I was like, how did they do that? That is very convincing.
That's
Uh,
that's yeah, really cool.
And so it's kind of I guess I do want to say that there is a comorbid and a congenital element. You know, there's a nature
Yeah,
nurture
yeah.
kind of thing, but it's not like, oh, there's this gene and you have to find it and root it out and destroy it, you know.
Exactly. Like, yeah, because that has obviously problematic connotations with the pray the gay away and all that
Yeah,
type
yeah.
of shit that they try to funnel people into as children. And it's like, yeah, people don't, choosing to be a pariah is not something most people would do. Most society doesn't accept these people. So if it was you, I'm always reverting to putting yourself in people's shoes to try to understand the plight that they're in the midst of,
Mhm,
and you were facing a society where your family might disown you for coming out the closet,
mhm.
what decision would you make? Most people, maybe they think they'd be that brave, but most people wouldn't. That's just a fact of human nature. And most queer people don't make a decision that I just feel like I want to be gay today. I want to be trans. It's like there's a feeling that like I felt like this for my whole life, like you just attested to. Like I've always felt outside the norm. Sexuality and gender expression are a spectrum in the first place, but
Mhm.
like you've always felt like you were on a place on the spectrum that doesn't match the people around you, and you're just finally putting a label on it. That's really what that is. That's what coming out
Yes.
is. It's not like I just decided today that I want to be different and I want to be part of this cool woke movement. Like that's not what's happening, and that's how it's being characterized by a lot of people who push back even within my audience. Like, why are you talking about trans people, and why are you talking about gay people? We don't need to blend that into
Mhm.
these black issues. So yeah, if there's anything that I have to say is is that I would like people in my audience to be open to the stories coming from people like you who have a lived experience other than their own,
Mhm.
and can help them open their eyes to things they haven't considered, that maybe that'll change their minds. Because obviously I'm going to try to, but I'm a cis hetero man, and as much as I can try, there's certain aspects of that story that needs to come from the people who are living it.
Mhm.
So that's what I have to say. Listen to people. If you have questions or doubts, even in some of the information I present to you, listen to people like Persephone.
Thank you. And I would say the same in reverse. If there's things that I say uh, regarding people, BIPOC people, Black people, or
Hmm.
in particular, you should absolutely listen to. Sorry, I was gonna call you James, and
It's all good.
uh,
It happens. It happens. Cam James.
Cam, and yeah, and you really honestly, one thing that helped me is doing that. I was exposed when I went to Eastern to African American literature, so as a course, where
Hmm.
they showed me different stories, like Their Eyes Were Watching God, Quicksand by Nell Larson, Joe Turner's Come and Gone, Charles Chestnut's The Morrow of Tradition, different stories like that coming from uh, Black authors who went through similar experiences, uh, leading up to the content that you're making yourself, and
Hmm.
it's it's like a ongoing journey, where I'm still learning, and I I would encourage people absolutely to watch your stuff as well, just because I can offer I can offer some exposure and experience when it comes to the black side of things, having studied it in media, having black friends, and dating non-white people. But you should absolutely always go to the source if you want, the most immediate, honest, and genuine kind of experience. Because ultimately, I'm an ally as far as that goes. And
Same here. Exactly. Yeah, just go to the source.
And all of that being said, I thank you very much for being on. This was
Hmm.
I was super anxious. I'm like, oh, I um but you it was very easy to talk with you, and you have just given a lot of really rich food for thought. And is there
Yeah.
anything that you would like to plug, as far as anything that you have in the works, or that you'd like
Oh,
people
for
to check
sure,
out?
man. For sure, for sure. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, just for now, follow on YouTube, Cam James, CAMJAMES, and I have several channels, but they're all listed on the profile of on the Cam James profile. So if you want to check out anything else, I make content speaking truth to power. I have a whole channel dedicated to politics. I have a whole channel dedicated to rants and racial topics, and then my main channel is financial exploitation and calling out scammers and grifters for the most part. So if anything that like that interests you, feel free to join the journey and support. But in the interim, shout out to the entire queer community. Much love for y'all, and just know that this specific cishet black man has your back.
All right.